You spent over a decade supporting families and managing programs, leading non-profit teams.
Yeah.
What point did you realize something wasn't quite right, that you needed to change something?
When I hit rock bottom, I had been doing well. It hit a low early in my career. And at that point in time, I realized I needed to go back and get the training. Often we're moving into leadership positions without that training and support to do the role. So I went back to school, got my management degree, did some work on myself to get to that point where I started to grow and develop my team. And we were really a succinct, strong team. We were doing some incredible things. And as a result, we got this large, big new contract that left me scrambling to keep up. And so instantly overnight, more responsibilities and more travel and more staff and bigger budget and all of this kind of stuff. And so I did what most of us do. I doubled down. I worked harder. I stayed later. I, dove in deeper and kind of lost sense of what I was really doing along that way. And my staff sort of kept telling me, like, you're not listening, you're not helping, you're not there for us, you keep pushing us to do more. And I'm like, come on, we got more to do, right? And so it kind of culminated in this big mess where, first I'd got a performance review where staff said I lacked integrity. Like, talk about, that one hurt.
Yeah.
And then the staff filed a grievance against me. And so those two things left me, like I say, hitting rock bottom. I didn't know if I wanted to do the job anymore. I didn't know if I wanted to stay in the sector anymore. I just, what was the point? I had tried so hard and this is what everybody gave me. And at the time, my boss had been my boss for quite a while. So he knew my strengths. He knew what I was capable of. And he didn't know what to do in this situation. Like, I can't help you anymore, Kathy. I don't know what's going on. And so he was the one that introduced me to coaching. And so it was then that I was like, oh, I need to work on myself, right? It's not just about the leadership and the budgets and the meetings. It's about how am I showing up? And that lack of integrity was in that I'm here for you, but I'm not. Work-life balance is important, but I was so out of balance and I was pushing my staff to be out of balance. So absolutely, lack of integrity was a real wake-up call.
That sounds, incredibly painful, but absolutely candid. And I was going to ask you originally, what does burnout look like? But I think there's a better version of that question, which is knowing what you know now that you probably didn't know at the time. What did burnout actually look like?
Yeah.
Because I think we learn a lot in the post experience, and when we realize that we've gone too far, and then it's easy to kind of piece together the things that we wouldn't have known even at the time were signs, right?
Yes. When we talk about burnout, it's a physical, mental exhaustion, right? That's what's happening for leaders often. They show up together, right? Like they're able to do their job. They're putting in 8, 10, 12-hour days. They're getting things done. And so to the outside observer, you're on fire, right? You're doing stuff. It's the inner, I call it just that ickiness. You're not being true to yourself. You're not being true to your values. Something's off. At one point, my son was in a car accident. 16 years old, new to driving, first snowfall of the year. He's not wearing a seatbelt, flips the car end over end, and is thrown out the back window. Miraculously, he did not have a broken bone. Fine for the most part. I was 8 hours away at a meeting, or at training actually. And I was, shut my phone off at 8:30 because we're going into training. So at 10 o'clock, I turn my phone on. It's full of messages from my husband, right? And so I call him and he tells me what happened. He's like, he's okay. He just came out of x-ray. Like, he's in a lot of pain, but, stay. So my husband tells me to stay at training. And of course, I'm, learning and getting stuff done. Absolutely, I'm going to stay. And so 3 days, I finish up the training. On the third day, I'm set to travel to the other side of the country to go to management meetings. I went instead of coming home. So my husband, my other son, took care of my son who was through the accident. Talk about mismatch of values. Family is incredibly important to me, right? And yet not once, but twice, I put work over my family. And so that mismatch of values was that sign to me, that icking. I could feel the tension, and yet I just powered through, right? This is important. My husband's got it. Everything's fine. And it's that mismatch of values that is that warning sign that you're leading to burnout. And that was that personal example, but there was many work examples too, where I just kept feeling the ick and just pushing through it.
Wow. I mean, I can't imagine how did was your husband still accepting of that kind of behavior even after the fact? Like, because I bet there's a lot of people out there who would tell their, spouse, their partner to, you stay, but then secretly on the inside were like, you'll come home. Gotta come home, right? So, but
to his credit, he's never done. We've had millions of conversations. My son has said, "Mom, it's fine." I was like, "Hi," I couldn't tell who was there or not there, right? We've had lots of conversations about it since. But I think, on the flip side, when I decided it was time to leave that position and start out on my own in a business, my husband wanted me to stay, and not because, he didn't believe in me or didn't think what I was saying I wanted to do was important. But there's also an element of, what's the word? Prestige. I could have, kept moving up the ladder, making good money, having a good title, a good position. And so the role brought something to us as a family, as like, oh, Kathy's this leader, right? And so he and I kept looking at that like, this is what you got to do. You have the opportunity, like, you keep climbing the ladder. And at some point I was like, this just doesn't align with me. It doesn't align with who I am. My values are constantly being squashed. Something's completely off, right? Now, I could have stayed in the role and shifted things perhaps, but at some point I recognized that the sector I'm in is a really crisis-driven, scarcity mindset, panic kind of all the time sector. And if we're going to change that, it's probably going to take more than just me kind of saying, hey, I'm setting some boundaries. It's going to take a lot of us saying those kinds of things. And so I knew that if I started working with leaders individually, that I would probably have a bigger ripple than just me pushing back alone.